Gil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, James. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. So you've been part of the show since the very beginning. How do you feel like Thomas has evolved as a character over that time as we head into season five?
Well, I think it was more adversarial in the beginning, as and we coming out the gate, if anybody can remember the first season, and then there was shifting alliances and dynamics that kind of made Rainwater have to strategize differently from season to season. And he's back at it again this season.
Kind of back at it in a very different way though in that relationship, because how do you think he feels about having John Dutton as governor?
Well, that is a big power dynamic shift, and that could really serve the purposes that John has, but all those surrounding the land are going to have to reassess their positioning with them.
No doubt about that. And like you said, the relationships kind of changed between the two of them over the course of the years. So they've worked together in the past. They've been big adversaries in the past. So would you say where is their common ground right now? Would you say, if there is any, in your opinion?
I think the common ground is that they both have a deep respect for each other and for the stewardship of the land. I mean, that's what's most connecting for definitely Rainwater, and I think it's a legacy that John Dutton has for his family. But he's pressured by a lot of outside forces, trying to keep afloat, after being, generations within his family and ownership.
No doubt about that. Now, things between Casey and Monica have arguably never been better than they are right now. And we saw Casey really being respectful of Native American culture last season. So first of all, as a Native American yourself, how happy were you to see those scenes as a part of the show? And what would you say Rainwater's opinion of Casey is?
I think Casey is struggling between two different worlds. He has the colonial mindset, that he was raised on, but he also has a deep appreciation for the natural law and natural world, perspective that he's, shares with Monica. So Rainwater is somewhat of almost like an outside stepfather, in terms of guidance and understanding that he wants to really build a value system for his son Tate, that's more in the real world and not the colonial or commercial world that he's a big part of.
Do you think it's kind of appropriate that the show actually is airing during the middle of Native American Heritage Month?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, because we get to see some of the Native American culture in the show. Do you think that this is a good time to be able to put a spotlight on that?
Oh, I think it's always a good time to put the spotlight, on native culture and diversity and the contributions that the community has made to making this country of a stronger character. And there's a lot of challenges for Native Americans that don't really reach the mainstream. So it's wonderful that Yellowstone and Taylor in his writing addresses some of those things, and also sharing some of the ceremony and culture within the show.
Exactly what I was thinking. Absolutely. Certainly, we don't see that enough for sure. So we know that Rainwater's looking for potential allies this season. How much do you feel like Jamie could actually be a wild card this season, or do you feel like that Rainwater might not be able to trust him either?
Well, Rainwater doesn't really have much interaction with Jamie, so he's not really privy to the back scenes or the family dynamics that he's engaged in. And then of course, news will come out that's going to be news for him as well, for Rainwater, that is. But everybody's a wild card, in this scenario.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, including market equities. I'll throw them in there too, because they're no fan of the Duttons either. And they've certainly offered to help Rainwater in the past. And so do you think that he maybe still sees them as an ally?
I think he's looking for a means to the end, and if it facilitates him and it accelerates the time frame that can happen, then that's where his decision making based on the system that he's working on, comes into play. He's still a man of a moral, backbone and compassion, and some of the values, as many of the values that the Native culture encourages, and it's a tough line to really walk.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I thought it was interesting when I was watching the trailer that John Dutton says a line to the fact is, we've got a lot of enemies, and they show Rainwater in that sequence of saying that he's one of the enemies. Do you think he feels like he's the bad guy here, or the enemy, or do you feel like he's the one that thinks he's doing the right thing?
Oh, I'm certainly sure that John feels the pressure and the responsibility of a legacy that he's promised his father and his grandfather to live through and to pass that on, to the next generation. So I think that's where another thing they have in common. He understands the nature of the passing on of the land to the next generation, and its stewardship and trying to keep it from getting developed in the very commercial way that they're always pressured to do.
It's interesting because politics have always been kind of a part of the show, but never like a huge part of the show. Do you feel like politics are just kind of different in Montana, and we're going to see a little bit of a different side of that than we would normally get to see in say, other shows?
I think it's just so topical right now, right? And Taylor really writes what he knows and what he observes. So it's a realistic injection of what the current world that we're living in, and it doesn't he doesn't really try to take a political side. He just makes a presentation, and then lets the audience decide where they fall on the matters that are being presented.
I like to play what if scenarios every now and then, Gil. So I couldn't help but wonder as I was preparing for this, what kind of a governor do you think Rainwater would make?
I think he'd make a great governor. Of course, he's going to have his opposition, and there's always the opposing forces that are not going to agree with what he wants. But that's what this country was kind of been operating on since the very beginning. My perspective would be there would be a more just and equal, policy making, and definitely a focus on the land and its connection for everyone, not just indigenous people.
Boy, would that be interesting. I would love to see that at some point. Now, we know that Rainwater's willing to do what's best for him and obviously best for his people as well. But how far do you think he's willing to go? Do you think he really wants war with the Duttons if it has to come down to that?
Well, it's how you define war. This is really kind of more corporate war. There's never a system where he's relying on violence. Even though there is some violence, on more personal levels of certain situations, but the war is really the system, and how you operate in it and how you gain leverage, and that's where John's going to have a new leverage position, as governor. So we're all anxious to see how that's going to affect us all.
Definitely war in a different sense. Very well put, Gil. Who's your favorite character or actor to share scenes within the show? Because I feel like you've got some good ones with John, with Kevin Costner, but what are some of the other ones that you love during the show?
Well, I love the camaraderie we all share with each other, but I have so few scenes with really anybody in the ranch, so it's mostly Casey and Mo and I, strategizing for what's best for the people. But in any scenes I have, we had a scene, me and Kelly had a scene, I think back in season 3, and for whatever reason they got that cut, but that was fun to kind of step into that world for a bit.
Well, we can't wait to see what Rainwater's going to be up to. Season 5 of Yellowstone premieres on November the 13th on Paramount Network. Gil, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.